After the success of Star Fox, Nintendo began work on its successor, simply titled Star Fox 2. Set to release in 1995, the game would reach a near-complete state before being cancelled at the last second by producer Shigeru Miyamoto. This is due to how close the game's development was brushing against the release of Nintendo's next home console, the Nintendo 64. The higher-ups at Nintendo thought that continuing to work on and release a Super Nintendo game would be a waste of money, and moved on to an entry for the new console which we know as Star Fox 64. Due to this unique development cycle, many of the ideas for Star Fox 2 would be implemented as well in 64. So if you notice a lot of similarities between them, then that's why. Various builds of the game would eventually leak on the internet before the game itself was finally given a release in 2017. If you want to play it today, then it's available on Nintendo Switch Online. Despite that official release date, I decided to cover the game between Star Fox 1 and 64 for two reasons. First, this was its intended release timing. And while we didn't get the game for 20 years, Nintendo still had access to it, and it heavily influenced the games that would be released in the years since. And second, it is the only other game to share a universe with the original Star Fox, so it only makes sense to me to cover them together. Actually, I'm just going to give you the timeline right now because it's pretty much just the timeline of this entire universe. Star Fox 2 takes place sometime after the first game, where despite being defeated at the hands of Star Fox, somehow Andross returned. Now, a lot of extrapolation had to go on to get to this explanation, but to the best of my understanding, it seems like Andross's mind is stored inside this cube. Before his initial attack on the Lylat system, Andross more or less inserted himself into a computer, which can then integrate with larger robotic bodies, like the weird face fought at the end of the first game. This is different from how his superweapon form is portrayed in other universes, where he's shown as more of a bioweapon. So, while the original metallic head form was defeated, his core was not. And this defeat only managed to anger Andross more, and he decided to continue preparing for war, this time focusing on a surprise invasion of the entire system. Much of the work put into preparing for this war was not done on Venom, but instead the factory planet of Eldard, new to this game. Between games, Venom actually seems to have healed into this lush green form, vastly different from the polluted wasteland it was underneath Andross. As part of this new army, Andross created many ships and robots, some of which were upgrades to weapons used in his previous takeover attempt, such as the Space Blade, a version of the Blade Barrier fought in the first game's Meteor stage. He also constructed a new base of operations called Astropolis near the Lylat system's sun. And to counter those pesky Star Fox mercenaries, Andross hired a dogfighting team of his own. This team was Starwolf, led by the vicious yet cowardly Wolf O'Donnell. Alongside him we have Pigma Dengar, a pig who, in other universes, was actually a former Star Fox team member himself under Fox's father James McCloud, who betrayed his former allies to Andross, leading to Fox's father's death. While this backstory is never discussed in the SNES universe, its proliferation throughout every other version of events makes me wonder if, in some way, it might be true here too. Leon Powalski is an interesting beast. The Star Fox 2 manual refers to him as an alien. I think the exact word used in the Japanese refers to foreigners more than ETs. The best way I can try to make sense of this is by suggesting that he may actually have come from outside the Lylat system in this universe. The final member of Starwolf is Algae, a vicious and violent monkey. Given his race and role, many people interpret him as this universe's version of future Starwolf team member and Andross's nephew, Andrew Oikeni. That said, an early version of Oikeni does seem to predate Algae, so this might just be a different character entirely. During the time that Andross was rebuilding his power, Star Fox was busy too. After the end of the first Lylat War, they left the system to search for more jobs in deep space. Both Slippy and Peppy used this chance to upgrade their R-Wings, now flying slower, more armored variants. All the R-Wings also received a new upgrade in the form of Walker Mode. This game was also the first to feature all-range mode, but I have a hard time believing that the R-Wings were incapable of it in their first game. It just had yet to be implemented as a gameplay mechanic. Meanwhile, they also picked up two new team members, in the forms of Miyu and Faye, who both fly the more maneuverable light R-Wings. Faye's backstory implies that she may be a new recruit as of the events of this game, but I'm just going to mention them both here for brevity's sake. She is a member of the Cornerian aristocracy who gave up her cushy life to defend her home from Andross's invasion. Miyu, however, doesn't really have a backstory. and we're only told that she's a very offensively focused pilot. Finally, after years of planning, Andros made his move. Instead of simply announcing his intentions like last time, Andros took the offensive first, claiming every planet in the system at once except for Corneria, which was protected by its satellite defense platform. Now surrounded, Corneria's General Pepper very quickly contacted Star Fox. He rushed back home to defend the one remaining outpost against Andros' tyranny. For the previous game, Titania, Fortuna, Meteor, Macbeth, and Venom return as stages. This game also adds Eldard, which I mentioned earlier. Eldard is also important because it has another boss similar to the previous game, King Ghidorah. A clear reference to Godzilla foe King Ghidorah, and also a tie into Monarch Ghidorah, the boss for the first game's version of Fortuna. As Monarch Ghidorah laid eggs, many people have theorized that King Ghidorah was her male counterpart. And, given that Monarch Ghidorah was stated to be the spirit of Fortuna itself in the first game, the king is likely the same thing but for Eldard, implying a possible connection between the two planets. Or maybe every planet has a creature like this? I don't know. The only other new location of note is the secret base, a weapon cache hidden between planets and only available if the player has collected every pepper medal in the game. Among other things, it contains upgrades to the experimental R-Wings, most notably the homing shot, which can only be found here. The base just looks like a neighborhood, kind of giving me Nuketown vibes. The base likely belongs to the Cornerian army, though it's never stated directly. Pepper also implies that this is one of many similar bases found throughout the system. Once Andros' forces have been beaten back across every planet, the immediate threat to Corneria is reduced, allowing Star Fox to approach Astropolis to deal the final blow. On the way, they would finally fight Wolf himself. Interestingly, while his teammates fought earlier in the game, would fight until their ships were destroyed, the cowardly Wolf left battle as soon as his shields were depleted, leaving with his life and the promise to eventually settle the score with Star Fox. Likely, this was supposed to be a hint towards a sequel that never wound up happening. On Astropolis, Star Fox would destroy the core of the station, revealing once again Andros' cube form, now featuring an image of him looking even more robotic than before. They would follow this cube back into the strange other realm that they fought him in before, where he would once again take on the form of a metallic face, though this one looks more like a monkey and less like the magic mirror from Snow White. But even then, Andros would fall. Whether or not it was for good this time remains up to you, since the story of this timeline was never finished. That said, his death animation looks similar between games, so I wouldn't hold my breath. And by the time Star Fox returned, the series would be rebooted, returning us once again to the events of the Lylat Wars. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Star Fox has actually been a really fun series to dive into, and I can't wait to see more as I play through the remaining games. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.